It's a pleasure to welcome into our mix the culture blaster, guy who we check in occasionally on film and television and streaming and music. He's Michael Snyder. Yeah. Michael Snyder, welcome. And you know J. Elvis Weinstein.
I do. Glad to be aboard. You know, these are strange and perilous times, but we're all hanging in there.
Yeah, you know, J. Elvis is someone who has produced some content that you can stream and listen to. Did you know that? He's not just like a sidekick on here. Yeah, he's a director. Go ahead. J. Elvis, please.
Well, I mean, the current content would be a documentary called I Need You to Kill on Amazon, and a comedy.
And that follows comics as they go into to Asia, back when you could go to Asia. It was fairly recently, yeah. And that whole dynamic between them.
And I got another documentary coming out July 10th called Michael DeBar, Who Do You Want Me to Be?
You have a release date then for the Michael DeBar doc.
I do.
Did you interview Pam? I assume you did.
Yes, Pam was an extensive presence in the movie.
Oh, Michael, you have to see this movie. It's really good.
It's called Michael DeBar, Who Do You Want Me to Be? I'll send you, once we're done, I'll get info. I'll send you a link.
Link me up, Jay. I'm all over it. You know, I've met the man on a couple of occasions. I know Pamela a little better. Yeah, I mean, I'm not friends, but their story, both of their stories are pretty fascinating. But it would be great to see, you know, a little more about Michael's life and career. So yeah, I'm on board. And you know, any of your stuff, link me up, and we'll talk about it on the air.
Beautiful, thanks.
So, what do you have for us this week?
You mean in terms of movies and stuff?
Yeah, movies and stuff. I'm watching a couple of things. I just wrapped up I was like the last one in the world to see, what the, God, I've been up all night. I'm so sorry. What's it called with that guy and then the woman, and then they have
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That's one of my favorites. That is serious Oscar contention. Yeah.
They're money launderers and they're on the run. Oh my God. Ozark is what I'm talking about.
Oh, Ozark. You're talking about.
I was the last one.
Yeah, okay,
to see it.
Yeah. Oh, in terms of television stuff, I have to tell you, I've been pretty fascinated and thoroughly on board with a couple of things on television, and we've spoken about them before, you and I. One of them is Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, which is just getting more and more engrossing on Showtime on Sundays, and it's basically a pulp fiction-y sort of, not as in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, but as in, you know, old pulpy cops and robber stuff set in 1938, and there's Nazis in Los Angeles, a Bund, and there's a demonic presence wreaking havoc, and there's a lot of topical stuff in terms of racism insofar as the Mexican-American community is up in arms because this is when they're planning to build the Arroyo Seco freeway, and they're going to uproot tons of families, and there's violence and civic intrigue. And in addition to all that, Natalie Dormer, who you may know from Game of Thrones, and she was in the Hunger Games and such, she plays multiple roles as this demonic presence Magda. And it's one of those kind of orphan black type bravura multi-character jobs, and absolutely fantastic on that level. And the art direction is amazing, and the idea of Los Angeles being a supporting player is profound, as it is in Bosch and Lucifer, the supernatural detective show that was on Fox for a while, and it's on Netflix. In all three shows, Los Angeles is a player, and I'm fascinated by that.
Oh, wow. Sorry, go ahead, Josh.
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh.
I would have liked it. It would have been a good spot for me, but I didn't.
You know, speaking of Sunday night stuff, I watched the first episode of a 6-part adaptation of a novel, I Know This Much Is True. Apparently it was 900 pages, a big bestseller about twin brothers, one of whom is a paranoid schizophrenic, and they are both played to astonishing effect by Mark Ruffalo. And it's just phenomenal what they can do these days with, one person playing multiple characters and, the prosthetics and makeup that are seamless. And you're like, you really can't believe what you're seeing, except it's so well acted. But the problem with something like this is this is not feel-good stuff, and maybe this is not the time for that. In fact, it's unrelenting in its tragedy about these two brothers and their life, I guess, in the 90s in the Hudson River Valley, a little north of New York City. And there's nothing but, there's the mother's dying and, the relationships these guys have and have dealt with, the screwed up stepfather. But Ruffalo is extraordinary. And you do get Melissa Leo and Catherine Hahn and Juliette Lewis in supporting roles. And
I watched 10 minutes of this. It just so happened last night, and it is really disturbing, though. I mean, the brother, they were dragging him into some prison facility or mental health ward or something, and
yeah. It's impressive.
Yeah, I also saw, just on a lighter note, have you seen this, J. Elvis, the Christina Applegate "You're Dead to Me" series?
Oh, no,
man.
I'm looking forward to it because I've worked with Linda Cardellini on Freaks and Geeks, and she was truly my favorite person to ever write for.
The Linda Cardellini, it's so funny you brought that up. She plays May Capone in the newly released Capone biopic about his last year of life, Al Capone's last year of life in Florida on his estate, and she plays the wife. And I kept thinking, really? Why am I not watching Freaks and Geeks? Why am I not watching Dead to Me? Why am I watching this horribly depressing? And then I realized I'm watching it, A, because I have to review it, to warn people away or encourage them to see it, and B, because Tom Hardy gives a bull goose loony performance as the syphilitic Al Capone. It's must-see horror, as opposed to, I don't think it'll make you bum out like I know this much is true, Will, but it's like, wow.
And that's called Capone.
Yeah, it's called Capone. It's available on direct-to-video, V.O.D., and it's nuts. And it's by Josh Trank, and Josh Trank was the guy who kind of exploded on the scene with Chronicle, his sort of found-footage teen superpower movie, and was given the keys to one of Marvel Comics' kingdoms, the Fox production of Fantastic Four. He screwed the pooch. It Trank tanked, and then he did nothing for 5 years until this Capone movie. And I'm like, this is what you've done? What?
It really seems like screwing up a superhero movie is a direct route to director jail.
Maybe 5 years off. Soul searching, I assume, J. Elvis.
No, people just won't hire you when you do a monster bomb like that.
Yeah, and let me just say, I am comic book guy, although much handsomer than the Simpsons character, if I say so myself. And boy, I was horrified at how bad that was and all the bad choices that were made.
But as you say, he was coming off a big movie. I mean, he was 26 years old and he did this movie, right?
But it was a big little movie, It was a found footage,
done on a shoestring. You're right. And then this thing, they gave him a multi-million, production, and it went south, I mean, I like superhero stuff. I do. Not your cup of tea, Mark, I don't think, but I've revisited a couple of really good, DC Comics is Marvel's competitor. They're the Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman company. And of course, Marvel is the X-Men, Spider-Man, Marvel Cinematic Universe company. But there are two really interesting, off-the-beaten-track but well-respected properties that were adapted from graphic novels about the two core superheroes other than Wonder Woman at DC. One is called Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, which is an animated version of Frank Miller's groundbreaking graphic novel about the sunset years of Batman, as he's like trying to still fight crime into his middle age. And how sour Gotham City has become. It's really beautifully done. And there's another thing, a Superman direct adaptation of a graphic novel called Red Sun, S-O-N, as opposed to Red Sun, S-U-N, that weakens Superman. And Red Sun is about what would happen if Superman's rocket with the baby Superman crashed in Soviet Russia instead of Heartland America. And it's really clever.
That's a really good. And so who did that?
It's DC. They're animated movies that have gone like direct to video. They didn't even have cinematic premieres. Remember when theaters used to be open? Anyway. Oh, by the way, when will that happen? I am just sitting here waiting.
J. Elvis, when do you think there'll be movie theaters again?
I think probably like deep fall. The studios will release something to test out something.
James Bond in November?
Maybe.
When you look, just to digress for a moment, when you look at the packed pubs and bars in states that are beginning to lift restrictions, and even in some cases, the packed environments from people who want to lift restrictions, even in states where they haven't been lifted yet, Michigan among them, you realize there's a pent-up kind of demand maybe for getting out into these areas. I mean, it's clearly not healthy. I mean, from a pure medical standpoint and infectious disease standpoint, it's clearly not a good move, but it definitely is something that appears to be American cultural nature, you know?
Yeah, we're the only country where people just will not, where a certain percentage just won't wear masks. Just don't tell me what to do.
Yeah, that's really, really the sensibility that we're seeing. It's shocking. I saw some video of what was going on at one of those bars in the Midwest where they were like partying. They just didn't care. I'm telling you, man. I mean, are either of you guys reminded of that Gabriel Garcia Marquez novel, Life in the Time of Douchebags? Because that's what I think we're watching right now.
It is truly going to be, we've always imagined that there would be a plague that would wipe out stupid people, but I think it might be upon us.
I don't know, though. I mean, the wipeout part doesn't discriminate between, those people who have paid attention to the order and those people who have not, does it?
No, but at least we're at home.
Yeah, now we are. But, I mean, I think it's going to take a while. This could be a really long backbeat.
I anticipate that we as a country will massively screw up our first attempt at reopening, like massively screw it up.
I agree. I just get the feeling maybe I think we're going to see a massive spike in June, massive spike.
Well, how could you not? I mean, yeah, how could you not? These orders are being lifted. In some cases, they're being lifted in response to public pressure. I mean, in Michigan, it's at gunpoint that they take over the State House. It's outrageous. I mean, how is that not illegal? It's not illegal to go into the State House in Michigan with a gun. I mean, there's something messed up right there. And that's yet another thing, Jay Elvis, that you can put at the feet of a country that's got issues.
No, it's when you just see the numbers of people, it's like, would you go to a party if you knew that 42% of the people were belligerently stupid?
Wow, and this is America, our coast-to-coast party. Remember, gentlemen, as far as I can tell, 100 is the median IQ. And that must mean that half the population has an IQ under 100. And what does that tell us?
Well, you see it on TV. You see it in Wisconsin at a bar.
Well, party. I mean, it comes crashing together with the religious right, honestly, also. I mean, there was just a story today about how in a poll, U.S. believers see a message of change from God in this virus. They are trusting some message from God. They view it as a divine message that trumps, if you'll pardon the expression, that takes precedent over any kind of science. And anyway, I just sort of think that just plays out in so many ways that are destructive across society, But as Josh says, there you go. You got the people who, buy that, and they're driving the bus for big chunks of the country.
Yeah, I don't want to overstate the case here, but, we're in trouble when the debate is between science and faith and fact and opinion, and they're given equal weight. It's just insane. And, faith, I guess, to find inner strength and whatever, to believe in something bigger than you, it's all well and good. But this mumbo-jumbo about plagues visited upon us by some sort of wrathful deity, or to cleanse the earth. So let me get this straight. The Antichrist is their instrument, a fat orange guy sitting in an Oval Office?
Well, they would say the Lord's perfect work is done through an imperfect vessel. They would say that.
Boy, there's a vessel there.
It's hard to believe God would engineer something that kills you for going to church.
That's a great point. Thank you. Good point. Not really thought through then, all of the equation, is it? The poll found that 31% of Americans who believe in God feel strongly that the virus is a sign of God telling humanity to change.
After 2 months in isolation, I think God wants us to change our sweatpants.
Take a shower. That's all I'm saying.
The COVID-19 virus has disproportionately walloped black Americans, exposing societal inequality that has left minorities more vulnerable and heightened concern that the risks they face are getting ignored by a push to reopen the U.S. economy. Amid that stark reality, the poll found black Americans who believe in God are more likely than others to say they have felt doubt about God's existence as a result of the virus. 27% said that. compared with 13% of Latinos and 11% of white Americans. Anyway, that was just it's intriguing.
So people have more loyalty to Trump than to God? just numbers-wise. Trump's numbers are steadier.
You're right. You're absolutely right. He has a more unshakable base than God does.
Yeah.
Wow.
If he is God's vessel, the question is, when is this guy going to sink? You know, that's the real big question here. Is this going to continue to be the case where his following is so devoted that they, see no evil, hear no evil, etc., despite the overt, malfeasance that we see day in and day out?
I think yes. I mean, I honestly think for the most part, yes, because it's already so rooted in defiance that that's going to be hard to shake. The good news is that the people who are on the fence aren't anymore, and the people who didn't vote have a much bigger reason to now.
That's right. I mean, it could be quite a drubbing. He brought over a bunch of people who were just disaffected, angry at the system, didn't like Hillary Clinton.
Just hated Hillary.
Michael, we like you so much, and I wish we could shelter in place together, but it's time to say goodbye.
Well, feelings mutual. Hey, listen, your listeners, by the way, can check up on my hysteria on Twitter at Culture Blaster in case they want to investigate various pearls of wisdom. Yeah, at Culture Blaster on Twitter. It also connects to my articles and our various radio and podcast endeavors, kind sir.
Very cool. Check out at Culture Blaster on Twitter, the Marina Times. He does the Coastal Commuter. Michael is a screenwriter as well, but now you do the writing and less pitching because of the way Hollywood sort of parked itself temporarily. Anyway, It's a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you, Michael Snyder.
You bet.
Hello, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.